Three, two, one. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. For anybody watching, thank you very much for watching. And we are back to do day 3 of Hollow Knight. I spent a couple of days, obviously, rendering out my playthroughs and uploading them. And also made some corrections to my stream because there was a few technical issues. Still working out a few issues, but nothing major. We've been doing pretty good with that. Like I said, anytime you either refresh or rebuild a PC, you're always going to find little things or whatever. But for the most part, it's been going pretty good. I did want to hopefully not spend too much time before we get into day 3 talking about my opinion of Hollow Knight. And I have an opinion about Silksong, even though I haven't played it. I've done a little more research into it, but I probably won't get too much into that other than, I'll reserve what I have to say about Silksong. I think most people would prefer that, especially given that I haven't even played it, but I have done a bit of research into the game. So for anybody that may be watching the playthrough on YouTube, you will maybe notice the last hour and a half was really not much, not even really worth watching. I got to a point in the game where I was kind of stuck, didn't really know where to go. And I found a few things along the way. And I also found an online map that is actually really good. It does allow you to, for the most part, you can look at the map and you can turn off like all the legend and everything. So, and basically to prevent like being spoiled of like, knowing exactly where to go next and all that, you still have to like figure it out. And I started to use that more of like, well, where have I been and why couldn't I progress? And so I felt confident that I wasn't like completely ruining the game for myself because, I kind of feel like if you're going to watch a walkthrough or you're going to or pull up a map and just have everything spoon fed to you, in my opinion, and everybody's different, but for me, I feel that defeats the purpose of playing the game. And I think a lot of gamers would agree with that. But I know some people, they don't have the time, especially really casual players that maybe only play like 10, 15 hours a week. Maybe they got a family, a couple jobs or whatever. They don't really have the time for that. And they just want to play the game and try to get some enjoyment. So I don't fault anybody for that. We all play games to have fun. It's all subjective. Anyways, I did notice that a big difference with Hollow Knight versus many of the other Metroidvanias that I've played, with the exception of Axiom Verge, I noticed a kind of a parallel trend with both of these games. By the way, I love Axiom Verge, but my main complaint about the game was the lack of fast travel. And I actually quit playing the game because there was no fast travel. But Hollow Knight may have saved that game for me, because Hollow Knight is doing something very similar. And even though we have the Stag tram system, which is very limited, it's better than nothing, but it's still very limited. I did notice that one of the things that as I was, rendering out the uploads and everything, I was trying to figure out a way to negate the backtracking, because whenever you play a Metroidvania, it's normal to backtrack. That is a given. That's part of the gameplay. So for anybody, and I got into a couple of arguments with people about this online. I didn't take it too far because, it's kind of hard to have a civil conversation through a forum text message type of thing, rather than like a voice-to-voice dialogue. And especially when you don't know, each person comes from different worlds. I may be talking to a 12-year-old kid, for all I know, who knows? So I don't try to engage too much further than that, but I will engage a little bit, only because I know that my post will not just be read by that individual, it'll be read by many individuals when they go to like a forum or a video or something like that. But I don't waste too much time on it. But I did get into a little bit of a disagreement with an individual in regards to the backtracking. And basically this person was talking down to me as if I had never played a Metroidvania. Like this is common to backtrack. And I didn't want to get into, spelling out my full resume of Metroidvania gameplay, because I'd be willing to bet, I'm 50 years old, and I'd be willing to bet that I probably was playing Metroidvanias before this person was even born. because Metroid was my first game, Castlevania, hence Metroidvania. So I played from the beginning of this genre. I was there when it was conceived, and I said at the beginning, if anybody remembers, on day one, Metroid was my favorite. Followed by maybe Zelda. Castlevania was a favorite, but I think I preferred Zelda a little bit more because the Castlevanias that we were getting, they were good, but they were still very limited. They didn't start to get like, I still have yet to play Symphony of the Night. I know I need to play it. That's like peak Castlevania from my understanding. I do have the game and I will get to playing it. But anyways, I understand the formula of what a Metroidvania entails. And I fully agree and understand that you're going to be doing backtracking in a video game. That's also a given. But one of the things that I noticed, and this is also what I would consider a problem with Axiom Verge, is the world on both of these games is so much larger than some of the older Metroidvanias that myself and many others would play. So that's, kind of one detail that's pretty major. And then on top of that, we would oftentimes have in-game markers that we didn't have to really deal with. So we had like reminders and things like that. And while we do get some markers, and Hollow Knight is a bit limited on that, it doesn't, when you have a world that is arguably quadruple the size of like some of the older Metroidvanias, and you've got, all these different areas or whatever that you'll travel to, remember, unless you got a photographic memory, which I do not, I have like the memory span of a goldfish, you're not really going to remember a lot. So it's going to be like, oh, okay, I set a marker there, but I don't remember what it is. And one way is to look at the developers and point the finger at them. This is bad game design. That's one way to look at it. Another would be, well, this is definitely adds another level of difficulty to the game, but one that the player could potentially come up with, I guess, a resolution to the problem that would be outside of the game. And this leads into what is probably going to allow me to go back and play Axiom Verge. And I do have to thank Team Cherry for this, because Team Cherry taught me a lesson as I was playing Hollow Knight, and I didn't get that lesson until the end of day 2. So here's the lesson. And not everybody's going to do this. I know there are people that play video games way more than myself. And there's a whole different crowd of people that look at this game in a very different light, and more power to you as long as you're enjoying it. That's why we play games. Anyways, what I discovered as a negation of this problem, if that's even a word, to negate the problem, is take screenshots. So this is what I'm going to be doing going forward as we continue to play Hollow Knight. When I get to a room that I can no longer progress forward, I'm going to take a screenshot, and then I'm going to pull up the map and take a screenshot of the location of where I am on the map. And fortunately, because the way I've got my screenshot set up on my streaming rig, because I am running a dual system setup, a separate game rig and a stream and record rig, I can go in there and I can actually label those screenshots whenever I come to a point like that. This way, I don't have to backtrack. I can pull those up. I know exactly, why I couldn't progress. Instead of being like, oh, I don't remember what this room was. I don't remember what I need to get through this room. Do I need this ability? Did I get this ability? Now I have this ability. Okay, now I can progress forward. And, again, should I have to do that? I mean, for me, I would prefer to not have to do that, because I have to use like an outside tool out of the game. And I know some people are perfectly okay with that. I don't know, I'm kind of mixed feelings about it. Like, the less bullshit I have to do outside of the game, and where I can just be in the game and doing everything within the confines of the game, is my preferred method of playing. But there are some games that require outside tools that aren't necessarily cheating or anything like that, but just assistance, even taking notes, And I actually watched a little bit of Fighting Cowboys first playthrough of Hollow Knight, nothing spoiled, but I've already done 2 days. So I watched like his first few episodes. I didn't even watch up to where I was, and he was having the exact same problem. He was having a very difficult time with it. So that just tells me that this, and I also read a bunch of reviews because I wanted to make sure that I'm not just being retarded, that this is, kind of an issue and is for some people. So my answer and solution to that is, as I said, take a screenshot of the room, take a screenshot of pull up the map, take a screenshot of the map location. And whenever I start to get to a point in the game where I'm like, okay, I don't know where to go now, I can go back, reference those, go through the images, and then I can see, oh, I can actually do that now because I have this ability. So that will drastically cut down on the backtracking in this game. I'll still need to do it, and I don't object to it, but the way the game is by default, and depending on your, the player memory, because some people have better memory than others, not to, take a digression here, but Asmongold, we all know who he is. Asmongold surprisingly has an amazing memory. This guy, like, I'm envious, and I know this because I've heard him literally sit and regurgitate specific details about World of Warcraft, even years later after hasn't even been playing it, and he remembers it as if it was just like he just looked at the, at the game or the details of whatever he's describing. Whereas me, I probably have just as much time played in World of Warcraft, if not more than he does. I can't remember a lot of that shit. Even if I was his age, I still wouldn't remember. And I'm envious of his memory. And there are other gamers that have that kind of memory, so they're probably not going to need to resort to like doing screenshots. But I also know that there's a lot of people that don't have a memory like that. And I read a lot of reviews that, and this was a common complaint about Hollow Knight, is the backtracking, the map system not being very intuitive for the play. And I would agree. Like, in my opinion, it kind of gets an F for failure, but that's just my opinion. And I, like I said, I got into a bit of an argument with somebody online. I didn't really bother to engage. I made my peace. I said, okay, we disagree, and moved on. I'm not going to sit there and debate somebody online. But I guess the reality is that's more subjective to say it's a failure. It really depends on, many things, your memory, the time you're willing to put into the game, and whether or not you're okay with sightseeing in the game by doing multiple backtracking trips through the game that could be negated if you just knew exactly, okay, whether you could progress through an area or not. So that was a major problem for me. And this leads into the second major problem of the game, at least for me. And it's not just me, because again, I read reviews because I wanted to hear from people. And I read a lot of negative reviews because a lot of the positive reviews were people just saying it was a masterpiece and they hadn't even played an hour of the game. So it's kind of hard to trust reviews on Steam or whatever. But I did go to the negative reviews. I did a filter and made sure that anybody that was writing the review did at least, 15 to 20 hours so they actually played the game. And I found a lot of reviews, and I read through maybe 10 or 15 of them. I had to skim a little bit, but they all had the same complaints. One is just the one that I just mentioned about the map and the backtracking. And then two is apparently the long run back from the bench to the boss. If you get to a boss and you die, there's this, you have to run back from the checkpoint. Now, in my opinion, when I first played Dark Souls, and I'm going to reference that because Dark Souls was a painful experience my first time playing through. It was a love-hate relationship. There were things I absolutely loved about the game, but I despised the run backs. And does it bother me today? No. And the reason why is because I know the Souls formula pretty well. I feel that I've advanced from beginner novice to at least intermediate. I'm nowhere near close to being pro, but I feel I'm at an intermediate level because I've played at least 3,000 plus hours of these games, and you learn the language. So with that being said, if I were to go to play Dark Souls, am I going to die to some of the bosses? Of course, but I'm not going to die very much. I'll probably die, anywhere from, depending on the boss, anywhere from 1 to 5 times. I doubt I'll die as much as 5, unless I'm doing something like really challenging or whatever, or I get unlucky. So the run back isn't going to bother me. But when you are playing your first playthrough and you're running back, you're dying over and over, maybe you do 20, 30 attempts and you're running back, that becomes a bit of a problem. And I think From Software started to realize that the punishment of the run back being so long was probably a little bit too much. And you see this because once they got to Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3, you still have to run back to a boss, but that run back is, in my opinion, and I think a lot of the other people's opinion, is it's there, but it's fair. It's not excessively long, but it's not like, oh, you're just right there like you are Elden Ring. Elden Ring, you die, you're still at the boss for the most part. And so I think, in my opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3 were peak From Software in regards to that formula style of gameplay. Elden Ring kind of broke. I'm not going to get into my critique of Elden Ring. There are good things I like about it for sure, but it's not my favorite out of the genre. But what Elden Ring did do is they pretty much removed the need to run back to bosses, because when you die, you're right outside. Okay, so what I noticed with Hollow Knight, the first few bosses that we've done, with the exception of the last 2 that we have not killed, the run back to the boss was pretty short. You still had to do it, but it was balanced. But then I get to the Mantis Lord, and I only did the 1 attempt. I don't even call it an attempt because I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, because I didn't know it was a boss. I kind of thought so, and I immediately die. Okay, no problem. And then I'm like, okay, let's go try it again. And maybe I did do it a second attempt. I can't remember. But I realized that getting back to the boss and with full health isn't like a Souls game. You can't just like run past enemies. You got to fight your way back through, and you're potentially going to lose health along the way. So you're not going to, you stand a chance of not being at full health to do the full thing. So, and the run back is, in my opinion, it's excessively long. And I heard that they get longer and longer the more you go. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't work for me, and I literally, when I learned that, I realized, okay, I found a solution for the map, the backtracking, one that would work and I think would allow me to continue to play the game. But what I realized is I am not willing to do these long run backs from the bench, the checkpoint, all the way to the boss every time I want to do a boss attempt. I've reached a point in my life where my time, as I mentioned before, is precious to me. And that doesn't respect my time as a player. And I actually mentioned that in my argument with the person that was defending Team Cherry. And this is what I realized. There are people that don't really conceive the value of time. They're just playing games mindlessly. They're not thinking about, okay, I got to work 12 hours tomorrow, but I got to go to the grocery store, then have a doctor's appointment, also need to do laundry, and have to, do this, that. There's all this stuff that, that you got to do. They don't have to do that. I'm not saying they don't have to do any of that, but like, that's just, clearly that's not something they have to think about. They're only thinking about how many hours that they're willing to spend in a game running back. So it's kind of weird. And then I start to think, what was in the concept of the mind of Team Cherry when they implemented this design choice? Because even though this game is 7-8 years old, I think when Dark Souls 3 was out about the time that, or was already released. So I guess I don't understand why Team Cherry went to such extremes with the run back, given that it's fine to do a run back. I'm not saying none at all, but this is, for me, it's a deal breaker. And I wasn't the only one who felt that way, because a lot of people kind of felt the same. And apparently, and this, I don't want to get too much into Silksong, it's way worse with Silksong. You start out with short runs to the boss, but it gets worse and worse as you play the game. So I get to a point where I'm just like, okay. And I had even said that Well, let me get into the next issue and then I'll come back to this one. So the next issue I had was the required farming. So I noticed that there are things as you're progressing through the game, when you are killing things, you're getting geo, and then you come across a map bro and you buy the map, or you come across a vendor or a tram station or whatever. And most of the things at the beginning of the game are very much affordable. But I did start to notice that there were things that even without me dying, because I wasn't dying very much until I got to maybe like a boss, or if I was testing an area trying to get through something. But for the most part, I've actually been doing pretty good about going slower, not being overzealous, because I know how dumb I can be. And this was something I noticed with Fighting Cowboy. Fighting Cowboy is a competent gamer, but if you go watch his walkthrough, he's dying quite a bit, but not because he's not a good gamer. He's rushing. He's not taking his time at all. And I did the opposite of that. I was taking my time, so I wasn't dying near as much. That doesn't mean I'm a better gamer than him. That just means I learned my lesson. You got to be a bit patient and take your time with a game like this. So I wasn't dying very much. I wasn't losing geo very much. And I noticed that I didn't have the money to purchase the things that I needed in the game. So what did I do? I farm. I find an elite, the one that we did on the last stream. I spent 2 hours, 2 different segments, farming this single elite, and I got the geo I needed and bought the stuff that I needed. And I realized this is going to be a trend. This is going to continue, especially when I found the fog lamp that was 1800 geo and a few of the other items that are 500 geo or more. And I'm like, I can spend, if I'm using the default geo like collection with no farming, I'm not going to have the money to buy that stuff, but yet the developers put it in. So they're essentially saying you have to farm. There's no getting around it unless you're doing a challenge run and you're not maybe buying those items. But this is my first playthrough. On a first playthrough, you're essentially required to farm. And Fighting Cowboy even mentioned it and said he's going to do it off the recording to not, do recordings of him farming. He did the same thing with First Berserker Kazan. I'm not faulting him for that. I agree. Do it. Why do it on stream or do it in recording? So I'm not a big fan of developers putting mechanics where you have to farm for an excessive amount of time to get what you need. This is where I praise From Software, because I haven't had to do much farming in any of their games. I wouldn't say none at all. I had to farm Blood Vials and Bloodborne. That was probably the most farming. I farmed the Titan slabs in Dark Souls 1 at the Wraiths near Four Kings. Those were like the longest farms I've ever really done. And those were by choice. I didn't exactly have to do it. Well, Bloodborne, you kind of have to. I kind of sucked when I played Bloodborne, so that's on me. That was a skill issue, but I probably wouldn't have had to farm as many if I would have been better. But I'm at least being honest about it. However, all the other farming that I maybe had to do in Dark Souls, we're talking like 5 minutes, 10. I've already spent 2 hours and I've played this game. I think I've got 14 hours clocked in. And 2 hours of that is me farming. That is not acceptable to me. That is not respecting my time. Very much not respecting my time with these long run backs to the bosses and with all the backtracking. So I'm going to red pill a few people that may be watching this video who haven't rage quit it and moved on because they think I'm trashing the game. I'm not. There are things I really love about this game, and I've pointed some of those things out, and I'll do it again. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize is I know this was a crowdfunded game. I get that. So I don't really know exactly what their motives were, but there have been developers, and I don't know if this is Team Cherry's motivation for doing it. I want to be very clear about that. It may or may not be, but there are developers, both indie and AAA, that have shareholders. They don't understand gaming at all. So they look at the player statistics of how long players are playing the games, and the more players that are playing, the longer they're playing, that is seen as a win to the shareholders. And so they are willing to put up more money to fund the game. It's almost like a stock market type of thing. It starts to get more economic, and it does get a little confusing. And I know some people would say, oh, that's bullshit. It's not true. No, it is true. If you do the research, it's true. But not every developer does this, not every game, and with Team Cherry, I can't really point the finger that that's the case because it was a crowd-funded game, but it's possible they also had some shareholders that were also helping. I don't know. I'd have to do the research. I haven't bothered, but I do think it could be possible. That's what happened with Path of Exile 1. And now they're owned by Tencent. So they're no longer an indie developer. But the point is, developers will put in time sinks into the game to force players to play longer, which gives the illusion that the game it's got higher player retention, and for the time that the players are playing. So to the shareholders, people that don't understand games, they see that as, oh, okay, this game is successful. Let's put more money into it. And that is a fact. That's not me making shit up. In fact, I didn't even know that. I had to hear it from, I think Legendary Drops or one of these other journalists or whatever. And then I had to go research and I found out, yeah, it's actually true. So again, that's not every game. You'd have to research, per game or whatever. But I don't know if that's the case, but if I didn't know that it was crowdfunded, I would believe that's the case with this game because there's so much, gratuitous time sinks in this game that literally are punishing for no reason other than just to waste your time. So that for me is a problem. So I'm just going to be honest. I was going to quit this game after day 2, but I want to be clear. It's not because it's hard. I'm sure it is hard. I haven't really I found a couple bosses that clearly are challenging, but that's not the reason that I wanted to quit. And I want to be very clear about that as well. I mean, I've played a lot of hard games. I've got my ass kicked. The last game I played was First Berserker Kazan. That's the hardest game I've ever played. It's easy now because I understand the gameplay, but my first time playing through that game, easily the hardest game I've ever played because the developers they don't do a very good job teaching you how to play the game as far as the combat. You really have to teach yourself, and it's very in depth. There's a lot of moves and combos and all kinds of stuff. It's an awesome game. It's one of my favorites. I've already mentioned that through the playthrough, but yeah, it doesn't really there's no hand holding in that. So anyways, my point being is I didn't want to quit the game because it was too hard. I wanted to quit the game because I felt it was wasting my time. It wasn't respecting my time. And I started to think about Axiom Verge, and I was just like, I love that game. It respected my time with the exception that there's no fast travel. And then I thought, wait a minute. I could just do the same thing that I just figured out for Hollow Knight and take screenshots so that way I can at least drastically reduce the running back and forth in the world. I'll still have to do it, but I'll reduce it by at least 50%, if not more. And I could actually enjoy the game and maybe even finish it. Because I got about 3/4 of the way into the game, or at least 2/3. I was pretty far into it. I just got fatigued from all the running back and forth. So I'm definitely looking forward to trying Axiom Verge again and applying the screenshot method that I mentioned. But getting back to Hollow Knight, obviously I'm going to continue Hollow Knight because we're here for day 3, but I want to talk about what I'm going to do going forward. And I like to be transparent because I know some people that may come in and watch either the stream or the gameplay. I don't like to there are people that will oftentimes use cheats and not tell the viewers. There was a speedrunner that I caught online. They were doing a speed run and they broke a world record, and it turns out they were cheating the whole time, but they didn't tell anybody and they got caught. Somebody caught them and then they proved it. So that's not the reason why I'm not worried about it. I'm a nobody on the internet. Nobody's going to care if I'm cheating really, but there are people that may come in, watch my playthrough, and they're going to be wondering hey, why are you getting so much geo? And why are you able to spawn closer to the boss and not at the checkpoint? So the reason why is I went and I found some mods on Nexus Mods that basically allow me to fix most of the issues that I have with this game. So let me see if I can pull up that if my if this will work. So give me 1 second here. And it is not working. I know why, but I can fix this real quick. Okay. Okay. So I have 2 different monitors that I switch between, and whenever I switch to desktop mode, sometimes it goes black. That is something with OBS. I can't, OBS has to fix that or whatever. It's a long time technical problem. So these are 5 mods that I am now using as we progress further into Hollow Knight. The first one, these are on Nexus mods, by the way. There is a dependency that you need. I don't really count that as a mod. It just basically allows the mods to work. I forget the name of it, but so you do need like another technical dependency mod. Anyways, the first mod I'm using is called Retry Bosses Stakes of Marika. And basically what this does is instead of having to run back all the way from a bench to the boss, it puts you a few screens away, similar to like if you were playing Elden Ring. That's why they call it Stakes of Marika. So this is drastically going to cut back on all the bullshit running back to the bosses. Again, I know some people will be like, oh, that's cheating. Well, that's why I'm telling you. And I don't care. I'm playing this game for me, for my personal enjoyment. I'm not getting paid for this, so I don't care. The second is more Geo. Now, this one is kind of interesting because you have different options. You can double your Geo, triple your Geo, or there's ×5 Geo, and then there's ×10. So I farmed at ×10 to farm up all the Geo I needed. I put some in the bank, and then I have some on me. So I won't need to farm anymore. And if I do, I won't have to farm for any more than just a few minutes, just like I would in a Souls game. The next one is called More Markers. And what this does is, if you notice, I bought all the markers in the game, but you only get 6 of each. So you don't really have enough to mark everything you need as you're progressing through the game. This gives you 100 of each. So that's more than I'll need. They probably could have just done 50 and that would have been enough. Or honestly, 20 to 25 would have been enough. But that is another mod I'm using. Automap. Now this one is probably going to be potentially frowned upon, but what this does is when you buy the map, you have to buy the map of whatever area you're in as normal. And as you progress, the way the game is by default, as you're progressing through the game, your map is not updating. It only updates when you rest at a bench. This removes that. What it does is you have to buy the map just as you normally would, but as you progress, the map updates. You don't have to go to the bench and wait for it to update. It automatically updates. And then the final one, and this is one, like I said, I don't care. Judge whatever, but what this does, it's called Always Have Compass Effect, and it basically removes the need to use a charm to be able to see where you are on the map. And those are all the mods that I am using. I'm not using anything that gives me more health or more damage or anything like that. I still have to learn the fights. I still have to play the game but these are more what I would call quality of life changes to the game. And I almost feel that Team Cherry could potentially, if they wanted, I mean, maybe they care about money, maybe they don't, but if they could make 2 levels, difficulty modes in their games, both Hollow Knight and Silksong, where things like this are in the game on easy mode, and then hard mode, or you could say normal mode would be all these quality of life options, and then hard mode would be removing all these. Because what that would do is it would open up the game to players like myself who don't have the time to be dicking around with all this bullshit, and then for people that time is not an issue for them, they just want to play it the most, time non-efficient way as possible, they can put it on hard mode and go with all that. And this also could be applied for Silksong. So now I'll talk briefly about Silksong. I'm going to go back to the... So once I realized that the developers made this game the way they did, I decided to go and look at Silksong's reviews. And I looked at pretty much all the reviews, or not all, but maybe about 10 to 15 of more of the negative reviews. And what I learned is that not only are these same design characteristics in Silksong, but a lot of them are even worse. like wasting even more of your time, longer run backs to bosses and things like that. So I have decided I refunded the game. I had not played it yet. I'm just going to say I want to finish Hollow Knight first. And if my opinion of the game changes to the point where it like right now where the game sits, it's like a 7. I don't feel like, I'm not like dying to get back to it every time like most of the games I play. Like Blasphemous. I love Blasphemous. And that game's hard. So far, I was challenged more in that game than this game. But I love playing it, despite some of the difficulties. And I was eager to get back to playing it. Hollow Knight for me is kind of like, I want to play it, but I'm not thinking about it a lot. Like, oh, I can't wait to get back to it like I would a normal game. And given that you're only given a certain time period to refund games, I'm like, okay, so I refunded Silksong. I can buy it again, but I want to finish Hollow Knight first and really give it its fair day in court to give it a full opinion. And then I will decide whether or not I want to bother with Silksong. Because Silksong, it's Hollow Knight, but more advanced and far more difficult. And the difficulty is not really the question here for me. It's more of, if something is going to be so time consuming, it needs to be fun. It needs to be fun. Like to motivate me to want to spend that kind of time. And having to use mods, as I clearly just showed that I'm doing, I would have to, I went and looked up the mods for Silksong, and all the mods that I'm using are available for Silksong. So technically, if I want, I could apply, they're Silksong mods, but they do the same functionality. I could use those and play Silksong and do that. But I want to wait. I want to see how this game goes, how much further, and see if I get the aha moment like a lot of people as far as the enjoyment out of it. But I do want to say this. I don't think this is a bad game by any means. I mean, the controls are smooth for the most part. I mean, I've had some issues, but I don't think it's the game. I honestly think it's my controller. I think there's some latency issues because my controller, I kind of run my PC from another room, so there may be some latency issues. I need to test the latency. I didn't have time to do that, but it is something I plan to do. Because I notice sometimes I'll go to jump and it's not registering the jump as it should. And I don't think it's the game. I really think it's my controller. So the gameplay is smooth. I love how they did the concept of the soul well. When you attack enemies, you get soul, like you fill that soul well, and you can use it to heal. You can use it to attack with spells. That's awesome. I love the music. The music is really good. The art style is kind of a mixed bag. I feel like there's this juxtaposition in the art style. So for anybody, and I've referenced this already, if anybody goes and looks at First Berserker Kazan, and this is something that I caught later as I was playing that game. But if you look at the game, the character, which is Kazan, he is cel shaded, but the environment is, I don't want to say hyper real, but it's more detailed. You know, it's not cell shaded. And actually, what the developers did, and it took me a little while to catch this. They have, and I don't know if I can explain this right. There is a 360, like, I don't know if it's a sphere, but it's like this invisible sphere on Kazan. And I don't know how big it is, but when you are in the environment, anything that is, let's say, further away than maybe, let's just say, imaginary 10 feet, it's going to look hyper real. But if you get close to objects, whether it be an enemy or an object in the game, it goes from hyper real to cell shaded. So it's not just Kazan that's cell shaded. And I was just like, oh, and I was starting to think, I wonder if they did this for, you know, like optimization reasons. Like maybe it was a way to help optimize the game, you know, just for it to run better. Because that game runs amazing. You know, once the shaders are loaded, you will have a couple stutters initially, you know, when you're first playing, you know, here and there, but it's very, very rare. That's because the shaders are updating. But once you've got all the shaders, it's like I can run that game at 120, flawless. And it's so smooth. It plays amazing. So getting back to Hollow Knight, I kind of feel like there's, obviously I'm not saying that's not what's happening with Hollow Knight, but there is this juxtaposition between, like, if you look at the environment, there's a lot of detail in the backgrounds and the environment, the foreground, the middle ground, and the background, whereas Hollow Knight and in a lot of the enemies, they look 2D, they look flat. And that's fine, that's not a complaint, but it's just something that I noticed. That's why I say there's a juxtaposition there between, like, this, you know, this what the Italians would call chiaroscuro, which is 3D modeling in English, versus the 2D of what you see from, like, these flat images of, like, the Hollow Knight character, the NPCs and enemies in the game. But yeah, I don't mind it. As far as, like, the artistry of the game, the art style, I kind of like, I don't love it. It's not like something that I find to be, like, amazing, but it's not bad either. At this point, from what I've seen of the game, and I'm sure we'll see more where it gets better, because there's certain parts of the game where I notice it starts to get more detailed. Like that green area, I was like, oh, like when I went there, I was like, wow, this looks really cool. So I think I would give the artistry of the game a 7.5 to an 8. I think a 7 is a little too low, but I think going above an 8 would be too generous. But that's just my personal taste. Some people, they look at this game and maybe it's a 9 or a 10, and that's fine. You know, it's all subjective. But what else do I like about the game? The charm system's kind of cool. You know, I don't, with the exception of the map, I think the map system should just be its own thing. I don't think you should have to have, you know, a charm to be able to see yourself on the map, which is one of the reasons why I modded it. You know, I think the charm should just be there just to, you know, give your character abilities and buffs, you know. And the fog lamp, by the way, which I did end up buying, I farmed up what I needed and I bought it. I think the fog lamp should actually be a charm. And it's not, which I thought was kind of interesting. That way you can take it on and off as needed, because I don't know how many places in the game where it's going to be needed, but I remember 2 specifically that we found, and we're going to have to use it. And I kind of feel, well, that we should have to use a charm for that. And, you know, in order to get through the area, but it's on by default. I mean, that's a plus for us because it doesn't take a charm slot, but it's just something I think that I would have gone with, in my opinion. But anyways, let's see if we can get into the gameplay here. Give me 1 second. Oh, crap. Okay. So we did 8 hours the first day, and we did about 9.5 the second day, but we're at 18 hours and 22 minutes. And the reason for that is because I was testing the mods, and I also farmed in order to get the geo that I needed. So, and I didn't want, I'm not going to put that in the recording, but just in case anybody's wondering. So I have a bunch of geo right now. I farmed up a fuck ton when I got the mod, and I put 4,500 on the banker as a stash, because she only holds up to 4,500. You can't, like, I was going to put all 10k in there. That way I don't have to like worry about it, or anything like that. But she can only take 4,500, so I'm walking around with 6k. But I did buy the fog lamp, so we can do that. And we're going to go ahead and try some of the bosses now that we don't have to do these long run backs. Let me check over here.
Papa Sude.
I think we bought everything from this guy. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we have the fog lamp now, but we need to go, let me see if I can pull this up here. Okay, so we need to go over here, and but we needed the fog lamp for that, and I only know that because when I was rendering it out, I saw it, and then I saw where the map was. I was like, okay, I took a mental note. So we'll go check that out. And then we also need a fog lamp for another location, but we'll start with that one first, and we'll see how it goes. So that is a bit of a run. I kind of feel that we're kind of in the middle of trams, because the one we're close to right now, plus the one over here, it seems like it's going to be a similar, as far as the run to get down there, and there's no other tram. Well, there's that tram there. So it's like it's right dead in the center of all three trams. So we'll just run from here. 1 second. Okay. But I want to be clear. I mean, despite the issues I have with this game, like, I don't think this is a bad game by any means. Like, I don't want, like, I made a mistake a few years ago trashing a game, mainly out of frustration, and I told myself not to ever do that again, just because either I'm not skilled enough or the design choices don't jive with me. I don't want to trash the game, especially when something is beloved by so many people. If you're somebody that this is like your favorite game, hey, more power to you. I mean, we all play games to have fun. I'm just kind of have mixed feelings about the about it in regards to my personal enjoyment. Okay, I guess I needed to go up top. But just from what I've played so far, it's not even close to being comparable to any of my favorite Metroidvanias. I think right now my favorite is probably Blasphemous. I don't want to mention Vigil Signal of the Night, only because that game It has some flaws. I really love it though, but I also acknowledge that that game is kind of niche. It was only going to be like beloved by certain types of people or whatever. But Axiom Verge, the only reason it's not like at the top of the list is because, like I said, the problems with the map. Okay, where is it? So it should have been. Is this not? Oh, this is it. Okay. But I'm grateful because Hollow Knight, gave me an idea that will potentially allow me to, go back and revisit Axiom Verge and maybe even complete it without the frustration of all the running back. At least not the way it was initially. So thank you, Team Cherry. You gave me an idea. Of course, my system that I have now as far as functionality wasn't really, I didn't really have the options that we have now. Not saying that I couldn't take screenshots then, but OBS didn't have a screenshot function at the time when I did it. Now there would have been another way to do screenshots, but doing it through OBS the way I've got it set up is far more intuitive. I didn't know that they charged at you like that. Oh, let me look at my charms. I don't even know what charms I've got on me. Okay, so I got Steady Body, Fragile Strength, and Dash Master. Okay. Whoa. I really love the music though in this game. It's really good. Okay, so we're going to be going down pretty soon. Okay, keep going down. I think the geo that I'm running right now is, I think, set to 5 times. I dialed it down because I didn't feel like I needed it to be any higher, especially considering I have so much geo on me. In fact, my response when I was discussing Hollow Knight was actually responding to an individual who said that they refused to buy Silksong because they've been playing Hollow Knight and they've already got 60 hours in and they just, like, they're really pissed off at this game. And I was just like, I told him, I was like, dude, if you're not enjoying it, which sounds like you're not, go play something else. I mean, you're not, unless you're doing it as a content creator and you have to do it, because you're going to end up raging about the game and you're probably going to say things you don't mean. And I know I'm guilty of that. I've done it. I think the worst, my worst case was my first playthrough of Bloodborne. Bloodborne is one of my favorite games, but I said things that, let's just say, I regret. But, I acknowledge it. Okay, so we need to go down and over. We'll probably try some of the bosses, like the ones we were having trouble with. But I just wanted to kind of do a little bit more exploration. Oh, I don't think... Oh yeah, we do want to come down here. Okay, we can hit the bench. Oh, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but we also self-discovered that when you rest at a bench, and if you exit the game, it will port you back to the bench and you save everything, including all your geo. So if you don't want to backtrack, you can do that. I didn't test Silksong because I didn't play it at all. I just refunded it. But I kind of wish I would have at least tested that before I refunded it to see if that was an option. Okay, yeah, this is the fog area. Okay, so we were doing this blind and we got pretty far, but we didn't make it through. Oh, I forgot to mention. This ability, if you pair that with, Soul Catcher, your soul, the soul well, will almost always fill up. I'll probably run that a bit later. It's so good. Like I ran that, like you're just constantly filling your soul. So you can, like, if you get hit, you can easily heal, or if you want to spam, you know, range attacks, you can. It's really awesome. And it's cheap. I think it's only 1 notch. Let's see. This one's 2. Yeah, so 3 notches. Whereas, like, you could drop the strength. So if you want to maybe use spells instead of melee, or if we get another notch, we could drop Dash Master and go with that. Because Dash Master's good. But I don't think it's needed like all the time. Okay, so we got it. Okay, cool. Stone Sanctuary. Okay. Oh, I couldn't see it. Yeah, even if I didn't have the fog lamp, even if I'd have got all the way over here, I would have probably still needed it to get through this section. So I'm sure there's people that have done it without the fog lamp, but yeah, it's probably not a wise decision. Inspect, okay. And this is another, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this as well. So the developers, like on one hand, I think it's a good design choice. On the other hand, I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of divided on this. I wouldn't say it's good or bad, but kind of, I guess, kind of in a neutral territory. So if you notice, there's these spikes above me, and then they're kind of in the middle ground, and in the foreground there's like this black shadow.